Hey there, welcome to this new episode. In our previous videos or episodes, we saw how to build the journal, the ledger, the trial balance, and we successfully created an income statement. In this tutorial today, we are going to be working on the balance sheet, and it's not going to be complicated based on what we have done so far. Already, in our previous video, we built the income statement, but I think revenues should come before expenses. So I'm just going to change the filter revenues first before expenses. Okay, before expenses, and I think the fuels. Sorry, or let me come back. I think the fuels here should be instead the debit side, no, the credit side instead of the debit side. So I'm just going to carry the credit side. I'm going to carry the credit side, put there, and in this case, I'm going to carry instead the debit side. Like I prefer it to be revenues before expenses. So in this case, I will just put the sum. Good. Same here. I'm going to put it to be the sum. Good. So I'll definitely have to edit the function so that it should actually uh, give what it's supposed to show. So um, I'm just going to redo this because the function is just completely messed up. So I'll just redo it. If let me remove this and say if uh, okay, this for profit. If the total revenues are greater than the total expenses, then I think from here we should do total revenue minus total expenses. If not, we do nothing, and we close bracket. So here we're going to do same and say if the total revenues are less than the total expenses, then if total revenue is less than total expense, yes, that is when we will do the total expenses minus total revenue, or let's say the total revenue minus total expenses, so that it should be in the form of a negative, else we do nothing. Good. So already we saw this in our previous class. I just wanted to convert it to start with the revenues before expenses. So in this tutorial, actually, the focus is to work on the balance sheet, the asset side and the liability side. So for us to do that without wasting a lot of time, instead of doing it from afresh again, I'm just going to duplicate the income statement. So I'll just right click on the income statement worksheet and take a move or copy. Then I'll tick create a copy. I'll put it at the end and I say okay. So here I'm going to call this, I'm going to rename it to be balance sheet. Good. So from there now, here we have the income statement and here is the balance sheet. Now I'm just going to change the fields. I'm going to change the fields so that here it should be the asset side. So for the asset side, um, we will need the debit, not the credit. So here I'll untick this and tick the debit balances, and from here I will change the fields to be the sum. Take OK, and here um, I'll take I'll remove this. I'll remove the debit and instead put the credit balances. And from here, I'm going to change it to be the sum. Now that is fine. I now need to come here and select assets. To select multiple, I'll tick multiple. I will select assets and contra assets. So those are the different types I have in my chart of accounts. So I'm going to put them. And here I'm going to filter it to be equally only liabilities, because that's the only type. Okay, liability and equity account. So yeah, liability and equity. Good. So I'm going to close this field list. Good. So this is just very beautiful. And here you can see the total assets. So we can rename this as total assets, as total assets. And here, no, let's not say total asset. Let's just say asset side, assets. And let's say here liabilities, liabilities and equity. Good. So I'll just expand it this way. So we can see that there is an imbalance between both, and the imbalance is supposed to be the result that we got from the income statement, right? So yeah, let's try and check whether it's actually the same. For that, I'll have to redo this, or let's just try and get it. Let's just try and get it as simple as possible. Oh, sorry, it has just increased this also. I will just try and do this side minus this side. Oh, it's not giving the same amount. Here we have the difference being 3,500,000, and the year it is showing 1,400,000. Let me put separators. It's showing 14 million. This is huge. Okay, so we have to check what the issue is. So here I have actually choose the assets and control assets. Um, account receivable, cash. Oh, depreciation for equipment. This was supposed to be the accumulated. This was the accumulated depreciation account, but presently we can see that it is showing zero, of which I think there's an amount there like 10,500,000 for accumulated depreciation according to the accounting entries. Um, let's check the accounting entries. Depreciation of equipment. Let's check from the trial balance. However, from the trial balance here, it has a balance of 10,500,000. But why is it not appearing? Oh, okay. Here it is on the credit side. Okay. So guys, what I'm about to explain is going to be a little bit tricky, but let's go ahead. What happens is that according to our chart of account, this account is a contra asset account, and as a contra asset account it has credit balances, and our assets has debit balances. And when we built here our balance sheet, we made these amounts to come from the debit balances. As a result, us as debit balance, this depreciation for equipment doesn't have an amount. So normally the depreciation or the depreciation of equipment, the accumulated depreciation, it's supposed to be an account that reduces the original value of the asset. It means we could manage this in another place where, for example, we manage assets and reduce the value of the asset. Actually, it is depreciation for this equipment. Let me put 1,000 separator all through here so we can see the amounts clearly. I'm going to put 1,000 separator with this. Good. So you see the equipment is worth 45 million, but according to what we see in the trial balance, the accumulated depreciation on this equipment has a balance of 10,500,000. So normally the asset is supposed to have reduced by 10,500,000. So we could make it as a calculation aside, but you need to understand that when building the balance sheet, the asset side should have the accumulated depreciation reducing the value of the assets in question. However, this accumulated depreciation is supposed to be on its own section in the balance sheet, like the section for non-current asset, or let me say fixed assets. There should be a section for fixed assets where they present the asset's original value and the depreciation, then the final or the leftover of the asset itself. But in this case, I have not been separating current assets from non-current assets and from treasury assets. I just globalized everything as assets, so I cannot actually create a different section for that again. But we actually need the 10,500,000 to be deducted on this side so that we can have proper results. How do we go about that? Normally this is fine, the account type is fine, contra account, credit balance is all fine, but due to the fact that I have not separated it in terms of fixed assets, which we could actually put it under fixed assets separately, and also due to the fact that this is a pivot table, and as a pivot table I cannot edit the amount in the cells. You can see when I try editing an amount here, like might be referring to to its amount. To say we can't change the part of the pivot table. So if I have to change anything, I'll have to go to the trial balance and change. And of in this trial balance, I cannot actually change because all through their formulas. So the only thing I'm just going to do in order to make it fixed is that for now, I'll just make this have a debit balance. I think that's the only thing I can do now because here it is in the form of a credit balance. So, but normally it's supposed to be credit balance. But for us to fix the problem just rapidly, I'll just make this be a debit balance so that it can then appear on the debit side, but still with a negative amount. So I'm just going to do this quickly. So when I convert this to debit balance, you see from the chart of account, it has converted to debit balance. And if you go to the trial balance, you see the amount also on the debit side because it is following all the rules, but with a negative amount. From there, you will see okay. It has not yet updated at the level of the tables. Even in the tables of our balance sheet, it has not updated. Why? Because I need to come and refresh the page, and also because in our previous video we entered a macro that could help these tables refresh, but we did not enter the macro at the level of the settings page, and the changes were done at the level of the settings. So um, I think we will go back to the macro itself. So I'll go to developer. I'll take Visual Basic, and we will copy this the code and also put it at the level of the settings so that each time we make a modification in settings, it should also update the tables. I'll equally put it at the level of the chart of account so that if we make a modification in the chart of account, the tables should be updated. Which other um, um, which other sheet is going to affect. So I just copied and pasted in all these places. So um, in case there is any modification here, I guess it will be updated. As you can see, it is now updated. So I don't need to go to pivot table and take refresh anymore because it's going to be updated. So you can see now the total year, it's 71 million and year 67,500,000, and you can see the difference is now 3,500,000, equivalent to the difference at the level of our income statement. So to balance now our balance sheet, we need to make in such a way that the net profit should increase by the profit which was determined in our income statement, which is 3,500,000. But in this case, I cannot come and sum or add it because if I try editing the pivot table, it cannot go. If it was normal range, it could actually go. But here is a pivot table. I cannot edit the content of a cell. So the only thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to make a summary of our balance sheet on this side so that we can see the total assets, the total liabilities, the net profit or loss, then have the total liability, total of the liabilities to balancing. So that's the only thing I can do in this case. But if it was normal field, if we created this table ourselves, we could actually make in such a way that this account for profit should be this amount plus the amount which is at the level of the income statement for profit, and the same thing for net loss account. But we will just make it look this way. So at the level of net profit, it is going to be equal to the income statement's net profit, and the net loss is also going to be equal to the income statement net loss, which is presently nothing. So these two cells are just going to be referring to the income statement. So from there, I can just put here um, liability, or let me say liability before profit, um, liability before results, liability before results. So I can say that, let me autofill, right click and autofill towards the upside and take fill formats only. So from here, it's going to be referring to this amount. And the year, I'm going to put liability, liability after, after result. So liability after result is not going to be um, liability before result plus liability plus the net profit, and also plus the net loss. I'm saying plus the net loss, not minus the net loss, because the net loss is going to appear in a negative value. So not giving. Let's try it again. Equals equals the sum of all these. Okay, 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 good. So you can see the total liabilities now is equal to the total asset. So let me just put here total assets this side so that it should be referring to these. Okay, so I'm just going to put 1,000 separators. Good. So you can see everything is fine here, but it is true it is not in the balance sheet itself, but just around. So I'm just going to put maybe some colors, something like this. Okay, so we can see that our balance sheet is balancing with no problem at all, because our income statement is given this, and our balance sheet is balancing with the difference from our income statement, because the net result is part of equity. Net result is part of equity, and as part of equity, it should then build up the total liability side and make our balance sheet balance. So you see, this is the system, very well organized. I'm going to remove the grid lines. This is much more better. So you see, in case we just make a little modification at the level of our journal, like we just put maybe an account and put a value there, you will see all our statements are going to change. Already the ledger will not balance because I've entered just an entry without not a double entry. Already you will notice that at the level of our trial balance, it's not going to balance. And you also see that at the level, since it was an asset account that was affected, you see everything will not actually balance. So that is very good. You see everything is just very much automated. Any accounting entry you make is going to affect all the results or the other statements. So this is how we could build, or this is how we can build our accounting system from journal, trial balance, or ledger, income statement, and even up to the balance sheet. Hope this is helpful. In our next video, we're just going to see how to put more conditions, or make conditional formattings such that it should be changing values, and we will just try and make this whole stuff be more suitable to navigate, like to get to the income statement. We could put a button and make it much more sweeter. But already, in terms of content, this is all about the creation of a journal right up to the balance sheet. See you in our next video.